We're going to be talking about forgiveness over the next few episodes of Relationship Radio. And we're going to start in a place that people sometimes would find a little unusual. And that's this. How can I help my spouse reach the point where he or she forgives me? As a matter of fact, there's even a subheading to that we'll get to in this very program, which is, how can I help me forgive me? And that's what we'll talk about in this episode of Relationship Radio.
This is Relationship Radio, an extension of Marriage Helper International, hosted by renowned marriage and relationship expert Dr. Joe Beam and CEO of Marriage Helper, Kimberly Beam Holmes. We answer your questions directly with research-based principles that you can implement immediately. Regardless of the situation, what we teach will not only make your relationships better, but will also help you to become the best version of yourself along the way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to turn on notifications. Turn up the volume and prepare to take notes as we begin this week's episode of Relationship Radio.
Welcome to this episode of Relationship Radio. I am Kimberly Holmes, CEO of Marriage Helper, here with the wonderful, the talented, the most handsome, Dr. Joe Beam.
I'm afraid to find out what it is she wants.
I need to ask for your forgiveness.
What an interesting way to start a program about how to be forgiven.
Yes, that's not necessarily how to do it. You don't really go to the person you're asking for forgiveness from and just pile on the accolades.
No, it's not the best way to start.
Not the best way to start. But it is a big topic, and forgiveness is hard. It can be very hard. So we go through a process at the workshop that we really talk way more in depth about forgiveness, about reconciliation. But we wanted to hit the highlights of what is forgiveness? How do you ask for forgiveness? I know a lot of people listening to this program are thinking, how do I get my spouse to forgive me? The first key point is you can't force it.
No, it's definitely their decision. And so if you demand forgiveness, if you demand mercy and grace, actually what that communicates to your spouse is that you're not really sorry about what you did, and may even indicate that you're not done with it. Because people who push for forgiveness, you've got to forgive me because you're a good person. You've got to forgive me because you're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever it might be. These people who demand forgiveness almost always are demonstrating that they aren't really remorseful about what they did. Because people who really are sorry for what they did, they're not demanding anything. They're just happy for whatever they get.
It's powerful. So the first key is that don't demand forgiveness. And when you do seek forgiveness, you ask for it. So you ask for it in what way? You ask for it sincerely, plainly, and humbly. What does that look like?
Well, it's got to be clear. I remember a couple I worked with one time, and she was having trouble with being even around him. She was so angry. And when I asked them, I was talking to both at the same time, I said, why is it that you still feel this way? And she said, because he's never asked me to forgive him. To which he said, I've asked you 1,000,000 times. Well, when we hear never and 1,000,000, we figure the truth is somewhere between those two.
Somewhere in the middle.
Well, maybe not exactly a middle, but somewhere between those two. And so I looked at him and I said, are you sorry for what you did? And he said, yes. I said, you want her to forgive you? And he said, if she would. And I said, then ask her. And he turned to her and he said, I'm so very sorry for the pain I caused you. Can you somehow find it in your heart to forgive me? And she did. But the thing was, it had never come across before, either because of the fact that he sounded as if he were justifying what he did or trying to explain away what he did. I don't doubt that he had said before, I'm sorry, forgive me, but apparently had put it in such a word package that she didn't hear, I'm sorry. I really am asking if you can find it in your heart for you to forgive me. And that's what I mean by clearly and sincerely and humbly. Don't mix it up with a bunch of different things. Don't try to explain anything about it. Explanations can come later, but not now. And that's what we mean when we say that.
So don't justify your actions like you just said. But the other part is to not grovel, but demonstrate remorse. What does that mean?
Well, I've noticed over time that sometimes when a person feels really bad about what he or she did, that they tend to apologize repeatedly. And so anytime, let's say that, okay, I hurt Alice back several years ago by leaving her for another woman. I divorced her. 3 years later, Alice and I did remarry. And of course, I was very sorry for what I had done to hurt Alice. But if every time I saw her have a bad mood, every time I saw her getting a little bit of teary-eyed and those kinds of things, I would feel all of a sudden all this guilt all over again. I'm so sorry for what I did. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. What happens after a period of time, when you keep repeating that kind of thing, you start programming yourself to think that you're no good. Not only programming yourself to think that you're no good, you start programming the other person to think that you're no good. And so what I advise people is this: yes, say you're sorry. And if it comes up again, say you're sorry again. But don't keep doing it that way. Find another way to say it. And so if it comes up again down the line, you can say something like, yes, I regret that happened. I'm glad that we're not there anymore. If it comes up again, yes, it was a tough lesson to learn, but I'm really glad I learned it. In other words, you're still indicating remorse, but you're not indicating that you're no good. And that's when I say don't continue to beat yourself up with that, because if you do, you program you and your spouse to think you're no good. Don't do that. Program yourself and your spouse this way: I am truly sorry about it, but I'm so happy that now I've learned better. I'm so happy that now we're going to, well, maybe not the word happy, they may hear that different, but I did learn from it, and now we're going a different direction. That's what I mean by don't grovel.